So something happened that's moderately unfun. Let me show you. Do you see it? Yep, we got a leak on the Monte SS. This is the daily driver. It's always unfun when you find your daily is leaking water like this. Now, this is one of those plastic crimped radiators. Let's change it out and get it fixed. So now that I'm in the garage and I've got the car here, hood up, all that good stuff, I've been looking around to see what's got to move so that way I can get the radiator out. So first up, this bar has to be slid out of the way. Luckily, there's only one bolt at the top there, so I can just loosen those two, slide it over. Same thing with this one. Loosen them all up, slide it over. The motor mounts have got to come out, the upper one. So I'm just going to undo the bolts, flip them up, and they'll just kind of sit there nice and easy. Now, for the hard one to see, let's see if I can get you in here. There is right there, there's a screw that goes into the core support that has that little upper bushing that holds the radiator in place. That's got to come out. And now, I also realize I've got to drain the antifreeze first, but I'm going to take care of these things while it's still at a pleasant height. I'll jack the car up in just a minute and see if I can find the drain petcock. Oh, since this is a 2002 Monte Carlo, this is the same chassis basically as the Impalas and all the Pontiacs. If you've got this in here, I'm just going to take it out so that way I can see more of what's going along inside the front of the nose there. But otherwise, this looks like it should be pretty easy, although it's never fun changing radiators. Alright, getting the motor mounts out, something very unfun surfaced. Yep, the motor mount of the cylinder head broke. But that's not going to stop us from replacing the radiator. I'll figure that out later. Let's just get the radiator done. Now, once you get everything unbuttoned on top and you're moving to the bottom, you're ready to drain the radiator, this little plastic majig's got to come out. Looks like a series of 10mm bolts. Looks like 5 of them, 3 along this side, 2 along the front. And then I'll have access to the drain petcock to be able to get that. And also the lower transcooler line to be able to get that free. So it's draining. When you undo the petcock up high, it actually drains straight down, which is nice because that way you don't get antifreeze everywhere. Now with everything draining, now's a great time to undo the transcooler. I've added a big external transcooler because I don't want this trans to die because it's going to suck to replace. But to replace the or to pull the line, there's a little wire clip. You get under it with a screwdriver, pop it out. Don't lose that clip. It's a Jesus clip because if you lose it, Jesus is the only one who's going to save you. Anyways, pop that free. Line comes out. There's one at the very bottom on the driver's side. It's a little bit harder to get to, but I did take the battery out just to give me a little bit more room here to work with. So I almost got way too far ahead of myself. There's the radiator. I didn't get a time lapse when pulling it out because it's just, my elbows moving around as I'm yanking this thing out. However, there is one thing to know. There is a push connector right here on the bottom of the fan shroud that you got to pull that out so that way you can get everything apart. I was fighting with it, and didn't even see it until I got everything out to where I could see it. But now that you know it's there, you can get that from the bottom side and it'll be a lot easier. So the new radiator is right here in a box between the tripod because, filming. And I'm going to set it up next to the old radiator, get the fittings transferred over that I need. And, everything looks like it's going to work just fine. I'm still thinking about that stupid broken engine mount, but that's a story for another day. So let's get the radiator finished. One disaster at a time. We'll come back to that another day. When you're transferring fittings over, you'll come to this sensor. It's held in by a little wire. And you'll get a screwdriver under it from this direction and kind of pop it out. It's got some tangs in there so that way you can work it out. But now I'm going to pull that out. So the new radiator came with this nice little plug here, and it had some new O-rings. I took the old sensor out of the old radiator and slid it in, and it just didn't feel tight. So I took the O-rings off of the plug on the new radiator, new plug, new all that good stuff. I put the O-rings on the old sensor, and it feels much more solid. I'm sure that that's not going to leak now, whereas before I was questioning it. All right, my friends, moment of truth time. I'm going to wrestle the new radiator into the car. Luckily, I think it'll go pretty well because I know where I'm headed. Check back with you when I get it in. So the good news is it's in. It slid right in exactly like it was supposed to. So now I'm just going to go through, put the transcooler lines back into place. Now, when you do this, the new fittings that come with the radiator, if yours comes with new fittings, those lines just press straight in. The clip expands, goes past the barb, and sucks down over the barb, so that way the transcooler fitting stays in place. Or the line, not the fitting. But I'm going to continue putting this thing back together, one little piece at a time. Did I need to take the airbox out? Probably not. It just gave me a little bit more room to work. Plus, I was looking at this, and having it out of the way was just a help there. So, going to keep going. We're going to get this thing thrashed back together. I am finally victorious. Sorry, tail end of that time lapse, the camera overheated and died, but the thing that you missed was that I was struggling with the transmission cooler line. I've got an adapter that goes out to the external transcooler. It wasn't sitting in the fitting correctly. So what I was seeing is it was just pouring fluid out of it. I thought I had the clip seated, but it turns out I didn't. So I had to take everything back apart, well, the fittings, put it in a vise, squeeze it together, not like hard, but get it to seat correctly, put the clip back in, install it back into the radiator, and I finished topping up the radiator with fluid, ran the car a little bit. Yes, I know the mount is still broke. I'm going to go hit a few junkyards. I'll find one. We'll fix that later. But for the short term, I'm not beating on it. I can run it long enough to make sure that I get all the fluids topped up correctly. I'm going to drive it around the block, make sure everything's leak-free, make sure the thermostat cycles once or twice, so that'll burp the system. But realistically, this repair wasn't that hard. I mean, believe me, I look like a mess, but most daily drivers get pretty dirty, and I'll also admit, working on daily drivers tends to take the fun out of working on cars. We got the Riviera in the background, my El Camino over there, the 64 Buick Special back there. This was a lot harder to work on than any of those, but realistically, it still wasn't that hard. This is something you could do. This took me most of the afternoon to do, but a couple hours of that was about an hour or so was spent fighting with the transcooler line and the leak. So, you can take that off the list as far as what you have to do. Thanks for watching.